An Alabama judge could avoid prosecution for domestic violence in Atlanta. A defense attorney says U.S. District Judge Mark Fuller is open to that chance in Fulton County. He says Fuller is entering treatment for an unspecified reason, and the court offers pre-trial intervention programs for certain defendants. Fuller's defense attorney says he plans to discuss this option with the prosecutor. Atlanta police arrested Fuller on a misdemeanor battery charge after his wife called 911 saying he was beating her.
Because last week, 16 female senators sent a letter to the NFL demanding a zero-tolerance policy. And this weekend, one of those senators, Kirsten Gillibrand, had tough words for Roger Goodell. Listen to this.
I think the way the NFL handled this was awful. It was outrageous. We are now looking to the commissioner to enforce a zero-tolerance policy. Given the recent debate, if he lied to the American people, then he has to step down. Because he won't have the force of authority to change how they address these issues.
Goldie, in the end, how do we force change in the NFL?
I think a couple of things I disagree with here with Senator Gillibrand. First of all, a zero-tolerance policy would seem to mete out the same punishment to everybody, despite whatever mitigating circumstances there are. And every situation is different. It's like zero tolerance in terms of bringing weapons to school, and kids who bring a pair of scissors or too sharp of a butter knife that tend to get expelled from school without any question. And so zero tolerance is something I can't really stand up to. But what I have to ask Senator Gillibrand and the others who signed that letter, I am very pleased and very proud that they stood up and called the NFL out on this. But what about, the Judge Mark Fuller down in Alabama? Why haven't they called for his impeachment? Why this case and why not the other?
Mark Fuller, for our viewers that don't know, is a federal judge who had
absolutely a federal judge who beat his wife here in Atlanta, got a diversionary program, but no one has called for his impeachment. Why not that? And he's still on the bench and still has his job.
Statistics show that 1 in 4 women in the U.S. is a victim of domestic violence. Those numbers jump to 1 in 2 if they are married to a cop. Now, if you were to take cops out of the equation, that number for the general population would obviously go down a lot. And it's horrendous that it's as high as 1 in 4. But 1 in 2 if you're married to a cop, if you were to take out the cops from the general population, it might be as much as from 1 in 5 to 1 in 2. 2.5 times more likely. Law enforcement officers beat their significant other nearly double the national average. Several studies, according to Diane Wettendorf, author of Police Domestic Violence Handbook for Victims, indicate that women suffer domestic abuse in at least 40% of police officer families. Whew. For American women overall, the figure is 25%, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, you're probably familiar with the phenomenon of underreporting. Yeah, that's right. A lot happens in America that doesn't end up in statistics. Now, do you think when a cop breaks the law and that doesn't get recorded, you think the situation is going to be any different if it's a domestic violence situation? We know, as you can take this to the bank, that when we know and we see every single day there are stories that come out of cops engaging in misbehavior and getting caught covering it up, you know that there are tons of cases where they get away with that, where you don't hear about the abuse, where all of that just gets swept under the rug. And yet, even with the reported numbers, studies indicate, according to the Advocates for Human Rights organization, police families are 2 to 4 times more likely than the general population to experience domestic violence, making the potential for disparities in protective success particularly troubling. Sociopaths are attracted to positions in which they are able to assert authority over others. So it should come as no surprise that there are higher concentrations of sociopaths within law enforcement. The trouble with spousal abuse lies in the very nature of police work. The authority and control in the wrong hands will be misused, according to domestic violence counselors. This isn't just somebody ranting on a soapbox. No, these are people dealing with the reality every day on the ground, domestic violence counselors. What makes police domestic violence more difficult to deal with is the fact that women feel scared to report it. Even advocates for battered women are reluctant to dive into domestic violence cases involving police for fear of alienating the agencies they rely upon for health and other abuse cases. according to a report by SFGate. When other women report their abuse, they do so to law enforcement officers. Think about it from the position of one being abused by a law enforcement officer. The one doing the beating is simultaneously holding a position in which they are tasked with preventing that very abuse. As Diane Wettendorf says, quote, "The biggest problem for a woman reporting that she's been abused by her police officer, husband, or boyfriend is that nobody believes you. There are a lot of good cops who go into work for the right reasons to help people. Then you have those who are more interested in the authority and the badge and the gun." And now I will say, there might be people that become cops for good reasons, out of naivete. But let's be honest, becoming a police officer means becoming an enemy of the people.